Hi, I'm Ellen Gormley and welcome to my channel.
Let's talk a little bit about reading a pattern, a crochet pattern. So first thing I want to talk about is when you get a free pattern, like this one is a free pattern from redheart.com, and it is one that I designed years ago, but it's still up. The reason patterns, crochet and knit patterns are free is because the yarn company sponsored the pattern. So they paid the designer so that they could offer the pattern for free on their website. And the whole point of offering a free pattern is so it would drive traffic from you guys to the website to see their products and hopefully, of course, buy their yarn. So it's important to realize that patterns aren't just free. Like somebody has to pay for them because it takes time and it's expertise. And I don't expect my mechanic to work for free. So why would I expect a crochet or yarn designer to work for free, right? So the yarn company pays the designer. And so when there's a free pattern, you shouldn't just like copy it and give it away to everybody you know, because the whole point of the free pattern is so that you go visit their website. So that is why I'm covering up this free pattern mostly, because if you want the pattern, please go to redheart.com and search for Sunny Spread. So this is a pattern that Redheart paid me to make years ago, and it's still up on their website. I no longer own this pattern, Redheart does. So I can't give it away for free because it's not mine. Okay, so do you get one? You're following me? So even though I designed it, I no longer own the rights to it. Okay, so when you get a pattern, any pattern, there's going to be basic stuff at the beginning. And you should read the entire pattern before you get started. And in the pattern, a good pattern should have all of these front matter elements. So there should be the title of the pattern and then some sort of skill level. This one says intermediate skill level, but really this is the least important item on the entire page because I firmly believe anybody can do any project given the right amount of time and support and education. So even if you're a beginner crocheter, you shouldn't get weirded out or scared about if it says intermediate, because you totally can do it. You totally can do it. It's just a matter of time and practice. So also on the front matter part will be the specific yarn used, the exact yarn used in the model, in the picture. How many skeins or hanks or balls that it is using, and the color and color name and color number. That's what this is. So this pattern was made out of a yellow color. I know it looks pink probably on your screen because my printer is not printing the full range of colors, but that's okay because for the purposes of this illustration it works. So the original blanket is yellow, and it calls for a size J hook, which is a size 10, and it's a 6 millimeter. So you can use any kind of hook you want, but this is the size necessary to make a project that is this size. Okay, here's the finished measurements. So you will also need a yarn needle for this pattern. So if there were other things you needed for this pattern, like a locking stitch marker or a button or something, that would all be listed here under the items needed to create the project. The finished measurements. So if you create the pattern exactly as specified and use the proper gauge, which we'll get to in just a moment, then you should end up with a blanket that is this size, approximately 52 inches by 52 inches. It's a square project. Okay, so this is made, it says to get gauge, rounds 1 through 4 are equal to 4 1/4 inches. So that means when you go to start making the pattern, the first 4 rounds, rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4, when you're done with those rounds, that piece should be equal to 4 1/4 inches across the diameter of that round piece. So then you know if you're on track or not. So if you get a round piece in rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4, but it's 5 1/2 inches instead of 4 1/4, then it's way too big. That means your hook is too big or something and you need to go down. You need to crochet smaller. So also, if you decide for some reason to not use the specified yarn in the pattern, you could end up with different results. So if you use a smaller yarn, then your project is going to be smaller. If you use a bigger yarn, then you're going to need a bigger hook and your project will be bigger. So and of course you might run out of yarn, or you might need a lot more yarn, or it will just turn out different if you use different items than is specified. So in this one, the gauge is rounds 1 through 4. Because we're working in a round, it's a motif. Each of these little squares are motifs that are then crocheted together into strips, and then crocheted together, and then a border got placed around it. So this is a motif pattern. So it also says use any size hook to obtain the specified gauge. So if you work rounds 1 through 4, and you're supposed to have a piece at that point that is 4 1/4 inches wide, but yours isn't, then it's okay to change the hook size to get to 4 1/4. It's more important to get to 4 1/4 than it is to stick with the size J hook. Are you following me? So, but remember, if you're a super tight crocheter, then your project will be more stiff. And if you're a super loose crocheter, then your project will be floppy. So you get to decide based on your swatch the right level of floppiness or stiffness for your project. But they recommend you start with a size J if you're using this exact yarn. If you swap out yarns, all bets are off and results may vary. So, but that's what this means. So if you're using this yarn and your size swatch is wrong, then you can go ahead and change your hook size as needed. Okay, so after that front matter stuff, then there's more front matter stuff to explain. So let's go up here. So you should read through the entire pattern first, and there'll be a bunch of abbreviations in every pattern because it just helps condense the pattern and allow for more patterns in a publication because it takes up less space. But if you don't know an abbreviation, there should be a section called special abbreviations that will tell you the abbreviation if it's not standard or if it's something maybe that's a little bit unusual. So the special abbreviation for this particular pattern is a front post double crochet. Well, I don't think that's really all that special, like it shows up a lot, but in case you need to know what a front post double crochet is, it explains it. Here it is spelled out. FPDC stands for front post double crochet, and here's exactly how to do it. So when you run across it in the pattern, if you get to FPDC and you're like, oh, I've never seen that before, double check your special abbreviations section of your pattern. It may also say special stitches. And it'll tell you exactly how to make it. And if you run across an abbreviation and you don't know what it means, there's usually a glossary at the beginning or end of the pattern, or you can Google it, or you can check on my YouTube channel, and I may have demonstrated it for you. So this one is yarn over, YO, insert hook from the front to the back to the front around the post of indicated stitch. ST is stitch. So they're talking about the front to the back of the fabric that you're working on. Yarn over and draw up a loop. Yarn over and draw through 2 loops on hook. And then this is interesting, this is important. This is in brackets here. Do you see that? This little phrase here is has a bracket in front of it and a bracket behind it. Everything that's in the bracket you do twice. So after the bracket, it says how many times it needs to happen. So brackets, there will be a specific number of times listed that you do the items that are inside the brackets. Parentheses are different, but brackets will have a specific number of times behind it. So you would yarn over and draw through 2 loops on the hook 2 times to create the stitch. So all of this information is necessary to make this one stitch, but once you get it, you'll see it's really very easy. Okay, so we now learned that brackets indicate a certain number of times that something has to happen. Parentheses are different, and that will probably end up in the next lesson, but let's keep going here for now. So the motif another word for unit or square in this case. It could also be a hexagon. It's basically the unit that gets repeated. A motif is something that gets repeated. And it's usually a small piece when lots of other bigger pieces are put together in one project. So the motif, you need to make 64 of these to create the full project. So it's one motif and it's repeated 64 times. So for the first one, and then for all of the rest of the 63, you chain 4, CH stands for chain 4, then join with a slip stitch in the first chain to form a ring. So you can see the abbreviations there are pretty self-explanatory, but if you ever get confused, just ask. It's okay. Round 1, and then it'll say right side. Sometimes round is abbreviated RND, sometimes right side is abbreviated RS, and it would be right here next to the round number. And it's important to note, and actually, I think this pattern doesn't even tell you. It doesn't, although it should. Sometimes there's a notes section for the pattern, and it's usually here before or after special abbreviations, and it will tell you some certain information about the pattern that you need to know. And this pattern, and in most of my motif patterns, I work on the right side only without turning the rounds. So it says round 1 is the right side, and then it should also say, it didn't say round 2 is the right side also, but because we're not turning, that these motifs will always be worked with the right side facing, so there's no turning. But it would tell you in the pattern if you're going to turn. It would be either at the end of the row or round or at the beginning of a row or round. It'll say turn. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's so much to learn, but it's really not that hard, and you totally can do this. So round 1, right side, chain 3, and it says it does count as the first double crochet here and throughout. So from now on, anytime you chain 3 at the beginning of the motif, you can just call that a double crochet. It just takes the space of a double crochet. So when you're counting them, it counts as 1. So when you've chained 3 and it counts as a double crochet, and then you do 11 more double crochets, now you have a total of 12 because that first one counted as a stitch. So that one was 1, and then 11 more is 12. Then it says join with slip stitch in top of beginning chain 3. So it doesn't say in top of beginning double crochet, even though we've already said that it is a double crochet for our purposes here. But the dash here indicates that there's a total of 12. So a total of 12 double crochets will have been made at the end of round 1. So this little last bit after the dash in this particular pattern is giving you a stitch count for that round. Also, one quick note before we move on, but the dash here, so beginning chain 3. So I want to tell you the difference between this chain 3 and this chain 3. So this one, it's a chain 3 and there's no dash in between. So it's telling you to chain 3. But this one, it's a chain of 3, and it's because it's listed this way with a chain and then dash and then 3, it's indicating that it's one that you already made previously. So it's not you're doing it again. So join with slip stitch in top of beginning chain 3 is a chain, this chain 3 that you already made, okay? It's not telling you to chain 3 again. And the subtle difference is if there's a dash between chain and 3, the dash indicates it's a thing you've already done. And if there's no dash, then you're supposed to do it. So I hope that that explains a little bit. And that gets us started. So the patterns are free for a purpose, and that's to drive you to their website. So hopefully you buy their products and enjoy their site. So copying or downloading free patterns and then distributing them for free to people doesn't help anybody out. It doesn't help the website out, and it doesn't help the designers out. So if you want to share a pattern with somebody and you're like, oh, you made this blanket and it's beautiful, and people are like, oh wow, I'd love to have that pattern. Can I please have it? And you say, Sure, it's not mine to give though, but I'll give you the link to the free pattern and you can go and download it yourself and you can have one and we can have matching blankets. Yay! That is why we have free patterns. So please send your friends and family to the websites that have the free patterns and keep us all in business so that we can have more fun with yarn and crochet and knit. So that's it for part 1 of how to read a pattern. Catch me for the next step in this series and we'll talk about more nuances of reading a crochet pattern. Thank you.